Alright, so after watching After Earth, it was nice to see a good movie. It wasn't a sci fi movie like I was hoping for, but, you know, a bit of it was, but I saw The World's End. Um, the. I don't want to say it's a sequel to these movies because these movies aren't really related in terms of story, but it is the third major release from Simon Pegg, Nick Frost, and director Edgar Wright. Um, they previously collaborated on Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, and this marks the three-parter in their kind of unofficial trilogy, if you can even call it that, because again, these movies have nothing to do with each other in terms of story, but The World's End is is a really funny movie. This just there we go. The World's End is honestly a really good comedy. I laughed a lot during this. There aren't really a whole lot of dull moments. There are jokes that kind of fall. I don't want to say fall flat because I don't really think there are any groan-worthy jokes in this movie. And if there are, I can't remember any. But there are jokes that do not hit their mark as well as others. But for the most part, this movie is a crazy, hilarious romp about a bunch of idiots thwarting a global invasion by these robot alien things. The thing I notice about these three guys, these like Simon Pegg, Nick Frost, and Edgar Wright, is that they really know how to take this premise, this ridiculous, over the top premise, with ridiculously over the top characters, and really know how to wield that with this kind of stylistic finesse. They're kind of like Robert Rodriguez in that way. Robert Rodriguez, a lot of his movies are completely and utterly stupid. They are just stupid. I think he coined the term mexploitation flicks. Um, like there is no way you could watch a movie like Desperado or Once Upon a Time in Mexico or Machete and say, "Wow, that was a really gritty, realistic movie." That was set in the real world. No, no. It's very cartoonish, but again, he knows how to work with that. He knows how to please the audience. He knows how to create a good story around that. And in a lot of ways, what Rodriguez is to action movies is what these three guys are to comedies, are to British comedies. I mean, it's it's incredible to watch how in lesser hands this premise would completely insult its audience. It's a movie about five drunk guys who stumble upon this robot invasion, and they start fighting these robots. They rip their heads off. They save the world. So in that could make one of the worst movies ever. If not done right. Um, but again, a lot of the ridiculous stuff they acknowledge is ridiculous. When you laugh, you don't laugh at it, you laugh with it. They wow, I'm really impressed with this team. So, what's the story of the movie? The story is, if I can get a little more specific than I have within the past 3 minutes, The story is Simon Pegg plays this guy named Gary King, who in high school went with uh, went with four of his friends on this little challenge called the Golden Mile. And what it was is they had to go to all of these different pubs and around the town and basically I think have a pint. They have a pint of beer at each pub, and their ultimate goal is to make it to the last pub, which is called the World's End. Um, and it's this kind of stupid accomplishment that you could buy that was set forth in high school. I mean, if they had accomplished this in high school, they would have been like, "Yeah, we did that," and they would have woke up with a hangover the next morning. But it was a high school stunt. I mean, it was basically the equivalent of YOLO. I mean, the kind of YOLO attitude that a lot of kids are adopting these days. Um, like, let's do this. Why? Well, because it'll be fun. It'll probably be our only chance to do it, and although we won't physically get rewarded for it, we'll get to acknowledge that we did it. We did it in our lifetime. I mean, that's kind of the mindsets that they go into when they try this, but they don't make it. They pass out. They just pass out, and I think in a field somewhere, and it's honestly the best that life has ever treated Simon Pegg's character. So years go by. He's become. He hasn't really aged as a person. I mean, he's physically aged. I mean, I think they say he's pushing 40, but he's essentially a man-child. He essentially has not emotionally matured much. So what he does is he remembers how good a time he had with his friends. He remembered how big this challenge seemed at the time, and he sort of cons his friends into doing the same type of challenge again, so as to kind of finish what they started. Um, and his friends are played by some very talented British actors, like of course Nick Frost is in there. Who Nick Frost plays this plays basically the one who's matured the most. I mean, he has a good head on his shoulders. He's essentially the hardest to convince to go on this little journey. Martin Freeman is there, and Inspector Lestrade from the Guy Ritchie Sherlock Holmes movies is also there. I'm blanking on his name, and the fifth guy, the guy who eventually hooks up with Rosamund Pike. But I'm gonna look those up after this. So that's basically the premise of the movie. But eventually, I don't think I'm giving much away here. I mean, I think you see a lot of this in the trailers, but basically what happens is around pub number 4 or 5, they are toying with the idea of splitting up, calling it quits, because they find out that Gary King lied to them, and so they're like, "Screw you, we are going home." Like, "Screw you guys, I'm going home." So what eventually ends up happening is that after Gary, for some reason, told the entire town about their little get-together stunt, it is revealed that most of the town's people have been replaced by these alien life forms inside these pretty flimsy robots. I mean, they don't like being called robots because they associate that word with slavery, but they essentially want to form this. They essentially want to form this perfect society on Earth, like they've supposedly done for a lot of other planets. And anyone who does not want to comply, they just replace. And I think they say they turn them into fertilizer. So, um, so since Gary King told the whole town about this, so as not to arouse suspicion, they just continue on their little drinking um, on their little drinking journey. So that's the basic story of the movie. There are twists and turns along the way, but they make the most out of that basic premise and then some. I mean, they expand on that premise, and that leads to more comedy. I mean, I'm trying. Now that I've described the plot, it's really hard to go into detail about how funny some of the jokes were, at least to me anyway. I think the thing with comedies is that a lot of the times a comedy can be hailed as really good by a lot of critics, but you end up not liking it because it's just not your type of humor. I think that's what happened to me with This Is the End. This Is the End I didn't dislike per se, but I didn't really think it was all that good. I mean, the buck I paid at Redbox for it was I think all I would ever want to pay for it. Um, it's but a lot of the humor in that I found to be really sophomoric, really kind of. I think they went too far with a lot of the vulgarity in the movie. Um, then again, that could just be my natural my natural preference because I tend to gravitate more towards British humor than I do towards American humor. I mean, one of my favorite sitcoms is Faulty Towers. I mean, I think that show's hilarious. But and that's not to say there's American humor that I don't like. I mean, I like Big Bang Theory. I did like Two and a Half Men. Uh, like it was a good show. Not so much anymore, but it was a good show. Um, but the thing with this movie is that a lot of the humor comes from the fact that it never lets up. It never actually takes a break. I mean, a lot of the jokes in this movie come from just how these characters essentially have to go with the flow. They essentially have to keep moving. There is always this sense of urgency that is pushing them forward, and you could make the argument that the movie leaves you no room to breathe, but I think it does. But the thing is, in the far spread moments that it leaves you to breathe, there are also jokes in there. There are either jokes or important character revelations that make you care about the characters more. It's eventually revealed that just how sad Simon Pegg's character's life has become since the high school stunt. Um, it's I'm struggling to find words to describe this movie. I mean, it's just a really good comedy. I mean, it's. I'll talk about the performances. Simon Pegg is he just oozes charisma. I mean, he looks like he is having a blast in this movie. I mean, I can't really recall a movie, at least not yet, that I've seen where he does not look like he's having fun. I mean, where he does not look like he is giving it his all. I mean, he really knows how to do comedy. I think he's one of those really great British comedians of the time. So he's really good. Nick Frost is a very good foil for him, but the thing with that is, I wish they had gotten a little more time together because they got a lot of time together in Shaun of the Dead. So I wish they had gotten a little more time to play off of each other, but again, the movie just kind of keeps the momentum going. They're in it. They have enough scenes together. I just would have liked more. But Nick Frost, he's very by the books, sober guy. I mean, he prides himself on the fact that he's been sober ever since that night. So he harbors this real understandable hostility against Simon Pegg's character. Um, so so you really like him. You really like how intense he gets toward the end. He knocks Simon Pegg out at one point. And eventually he does succumb to the drinking. He does. I think at one point he drinks, I think, 5 shot glasses in a row, no breaks, no pauses. He just drinks all of his friends' shot glasses. Um. So yeah, he's really good. He's good for a lot of laughs. Martin Freeman is also very good. Martin Freeman. For those of you who don't know, he plays he terrifically plays John Watson in the BBC. I think it's BBC Sherlock Holmes series with Benedict Cumberbatch as Sherlock Holmes. He's great in those, and he's also great in Peter Jackson's The Hobbit. He plays Bilbo Baggins in The Hobbit, and he's in this movie. He's essentially playing. I don't want to say he's playing the same character, but he has the same type of. He has the same type of basic attitude toward this character as he does with Watson's character, as he kind of plays this straight man character. He plays. But again, he just has to kind of smile and go with the flow. He just has this kind of this kind of skittish charm to him that's really endearing in a lot of his movies, and I really think works here, and especially when he's put with Simon Pegg, who you really get the sense would do anything to get some sort of self-satisfaction. He completely abuses his. You can tell he likes his friends. You can tell that his character really likes these guys. He depends on these guys for companionship. But again, every single instance he just talks these guys down. He insults them. He calls them wimps. But he's doing it in good fun. And to see Martin Freeman and Nick Frost kind of play off that, and in addition to the other two guys, I'm kicking myself for not remembering their names, but it's a lot of fun. Each one of these characters, you understand where they're coming from. Each one of them contributes something to the humor. Each one of them contributes something to the story. I don't really think there's a bad performance in this movie. Rosamund Pike probably gives the weakest performance because honestly, she does feel a little out of place. I appreciate her going against type. Recently she's done a lot of action stuff, like Wrath of the Titans and Jack Reacher. It's nice to see her doing something different. This kind of quirky, apocalyptic British comedy. So she looks she at times can seem a little out of place, but she soon embraces the silliness of it, and she becomes relatively fun to watch. Not as much as the other guys, but what can you do? She's always trying to retain some semblance of dignity, and I don't really think that was the right attitude for this movie. She is still trying to maintain some stature, some kind of proper behavior, and this is basically. She just had to embrace the stupidity a little bit more, in my opinion. But again, she doesn't do a bad job. She does a good job. But again, when you put her up against these five talented comedic performances, I mean, it definitely shows how she is not as strong as the rest of them. But Bill Nye shows up at one point. You don't actually see him, but he voices what I can only assume to be the central control, the master of all of these aliens. He's this floating ball of light, and he spends 5 minutes arguing, having this really comedic, ethical debate with Simon Pegg. And Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. I mean, Nick Frost jumps in about halfway through. They're both drunk to the point of passing out, and they're and they're having this conversation about human freedom and human ethics and enslavement with this alien being when they can barely stand up. So, yeah, that's about all I got. I mean, it's a lot of fun. I mean, it's a summer comedy. It's a completely stupid comedy, but it's intelligent in how it wields that stupidity. I mean, I think that's really where the genius of Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz comes from, is that in that it knows how to stylishly control this amount of stupidity and generate some hilarious comedy out of it. So yeah, I really like this movie. I mean, it's up there with the better movies I've seen this year. When it comes to comedies, I mean, if I were to say that this year has not been such a great year for movies in general, the year has been even worse for comedies, with Movie 43 and inappropriate comedy. I mean, At World's End is a gem. I mean, it's a gem, anyways. I mean, look at the people who worked on it, but especially in comparison to some of the really crappy comedies we've gotten, it's a really good time. I mean, even if you don't laugh at as much of the jokes as I did, I think you'll be somewhat won over by just how much fun these actors are having, how devoted their performances are, how the pace is just constant joke after joke after joke after joke. I think you'll be somewhat more tolerant of the movie. Even if you don't like it, I think you'll be somewhat more tolerant toward it. Just for that. But like I said, I really, really like this movie. I mean, it's go see at World's End. No, it's better than Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End. It's better than that. But yeah, The World's End, very funny movie.